these sabhas and these sabhas and these samitis, the purpose of these sabhas and samitis was the tribal people used to come together, they used to discuss their problems, and then they used to come out with a solution. Okay. After that, when as the society progressed and as the society evolved, we we know a very very famous person called as Chanakya or Kautilya. He had written a book called as Arthashastra. So in that particular book, Arthashastra, he gives us a brief account of how the administration of a particular kingdom should be carried on. So precisely on the basis of Arthashastra, the Mauryan Empire carried on its administration. So the matter of the fact is, since the ancient times, whenever or wherever there were kingdoms, all those kingdoms were ruled through a particular set of rules. And for that particular point of time in history, those set of rules were their constitution. Okay. So in the modern times, what has happened is, after India was there under the British rule for almost 200 years, and after we gained independence, our constitution makers came together in the Constituent Assembly, sat together, and then framed what is the Constitution of India that we see as it is today. Okay. However, the phenomenon of having a constitution, although the word constitution may not have been there in the ancient times, but yes, there were certain rule books through which the kingdoms or through which people would govern themselves. Okay. Now, this is a bit brief about the term polity and constitution and its historical linkages. Okay. After that, now let us come to the main topic of the webinar, that is uh, the tips and strategies to prepare Indian polity and constitution. Okay. So now when we talk about UPSC, this particular subject, Indian polity and constitution, plays a very, very dominant role in the entire scheme of UPSC civil services examination. Okay. We all know that the UPSC civil services examination is a three-stage examination. In the first stage, we have something called as uh, the prelim stage. Okay. Then the second stage is the main stage, and in the third stage, we have the personality test, which is also called as interview. In all these three stages, Indian polity is going to play a very, very dominant role, because point number one, this particular subject has got a huge weightage at all that at in the prelims as well as in the mains. Apart from that, Indian polity and constitution has got a greater amount of cross linkages with other subjects as well. What are the cross linkages and how is Indian polity connected to other subjects of UPSC civil services examination, that we are going to analyze in detail. Okay, but now let us first start with the first stage of the examination, that is the prelim stage. And what role does Indian polity and constitution play in the prelim stage? What kind of questions UPSC has been asking in the prelim stage from Indian polity and constitution, and how can we deal, or how can we learn, or how can we place ourselves at a better position to answer those questions? That would be our point of discussion for the next 15 to 20 minutes. Okay, so on the screen given here, you can briefly see that the syllabus for Indian polity and constitution in the prelims examination, what UPSC has given is, UPSC has said that the syllabus would include Indian polity and governance, constitution, political system, panchayati raj, public policy, rights issues, etc. So through the term etc., UPSC has left the portion open-ended. So that open-endedness is something which becomes very very open for which becomes very very critical for us to cover, and we would be looking into that particular thing. However, now let us try and understand the weightage of Indian polity in the prelims. Okay, so as most of us would be aware that the Indian polity and constitution is a part of a UPSC prelims examination. And in the first stage of the examination, that is in the UPSC prelims stage, we have two papers. One paper is the general studies paper, and the second paper is civil services aptitude test. Okay, the civil services aptitude test, or the CSAT, comprises of your quantitative aptitude, logical reasoning, and comprehension thing, and the general studies paper comprises of your core subjects such as Indian polity and constitution, Indian economy, geography, history, etc., etc., etc. Now, out of those 100 questions that are going to appear in your general studies paper in your prelims examination, of those 100 questions, almost 15 to 18 questions every year are asked from the topic of Indian polity and constitution, which is almost 15 to 18% of the total questions are going to come from this particular subject, that is Indian polity and constitution. So on the screen, you all can see the bar graph, which gives you an analysis of the past 5 years of questions. And in the past 5 years, one thing that we can notice that on an average, 15 greater than 15 questions have been asked, or UPSC has been asking more than 15 questions on an average in the UPSC prelim stage. Now, what does this tell you? Even if I count on an average 15 questions every year, 15 to the is 30 marks. So 30 marks are coming only from the portion of Indian polity and constitution. And if we start analyzing the cutoff for the past 3 to 4 years, especially after 2018, the cutoff has been hovering around 100 for general category, right? Now cutoff is 100, and from that 100, almost 30 to 40 marks are coming from your Indian polity section only. Okay, which means that if you are able to focus on this particular thing, you are almost 30% done with the cutoff, and you are there, you are reaching the cutoff. Okay, so in that manner, Indian polity and constitution is very, very important. Okay, because it has a huge chunk in the prelim stage, because most of the questions are asked from this particular topic. Okay, so therefore that is the number one importance of studying Indian polity and constitution very, very nicely. It is because a significant chunk of questions are coming from this particular topic only. Okay, now point number two. Apart from, now that we have analyzed that a significant chunk of questions are coming from Indian polity and constitution, what are the kind of questions that UPSC has been asking? So we'll now talk about those kinds of questions. Okay, so first of all, if I have to talk about Indian polity and constitution, there are two things that I can talk about. One thing are the questions that are coming from your static syllabus. Okay, for example, you read fundamental rights under part 3 of the Indian Constitution, and then UPSC asks you right to marry a person of your own choice is guaranteed as a fundamental right under which article, and then they will give you 4 articles as options. You will have to choose the correct one. This question would fall mostly in the static domain because you'll have to read the standard reference books for that. Okay, apart from that, UPSC has also been asking questions which are related to your current affairs. For instance, recently, recently means 2 3 years back, government had passed the 99th Constitutional Amendment Act, through which it had appointed something called as National Judicial Appointments Commission. Okay, so now on this 99 Constitutional Amendment Act, because it was there a lot of time in the news for that particular year, UPSC had framed a question on that 99th Constitutional Amendment Act, and it had talked about, and it had asked a question with regards to the collegium system of the Supreme Court, that is the manner in which the judges of the Supreme Court are appointed. Okay, so the first insight that we can draw by analyzing the previous year question papers is that in Indian polity, questions, we can broadly categorize the questions into two parts. One, the first type is wherein they are asking you questions from the static content, and the second type is where they are asking you questions from the dynamic thing, which requires appendix with which requires an thorough understanding of the current affairs also. Okay. Now, if we again analyze those questions, almost most of the questions would appear to be straightforward. But nowadays, UPSC has been asking us analytical questions from Indian polity also. Now, what are these analytical questions? Let us discuss that in a brief. Okay. For instance, in the 2020 prelims paper, UPSC asked one thing: which of the following is the correct explanation of the term liberty as defined in the or as mentioned in the Indian preamble? Okay, so Indian preamble has a lot many keywords. One of those keywords is the term liberty. Okay, now as an aspirant, what we usually do is we say that okay, preamble is a 3 to 4 page chapter mentioned in the standard reference books. So I'll read that chapter. I'll just read, okay, there is some term liberty which is mentioned in the Indian Constitution, and I know that liberty as a term is there in the Indian preamble. But UPSC has gone a step ahead, and UPSC is now started to ask, what do you understand by the term liberty? Okay, so this now, because UPSC has changed its stance, now it has started asking us analytical questions as well. it Now the time has come that we even change our approach of studying polity. Earlier the approach was just going through the books and analyzing that, okay, this article 32 is regarding writs, there are five types of writs, etc, 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 which was most of rote learning. But now, because the kind of questions that UPSC has been asking, that kind of questions is changing, it is important for us to even change our studying methodology. Now it has become very, very critical for us to correctly understand the meaning of the terms that are mentioned in the constitution. Okay, so another fact or another insight, the second insight that we can draw from analyzing the previous year question papers for prelims is that we it is now the time that we start understanding each and every term, or at least each and every keyword that is there in the Indian Constitution. What is the significance of that particular term, and what, through the usage of that term, what does the constitution try to achieve, or what change does the constitution try to bring in the society? Okay, so therefore it has become very, very important for us to understand and interpret the constitution instead of just rote learning it. Because see, constitution, it has 450 plus articles, and UPSC does not expect you to even learn all those 450. That is least expected, because it is hardly impossible for an average student to go and rote learn all the 450 articles, which is not even required. What is required is, how do you understand the Indian Constitution? Okay, so understanding Indian Constitution and applying those concepts in your day-to-day lives becomes very, very important. Okay, apart from that, another thing or another insight that we can draw with regards to prelims is that we need to uh, we need to draw a linkage between our static portion of Indian polity and with our day-to-day happenings, or what is happening in our day-to-day life. Okay, for instance, let us take an example. In 2020, in the year 2020, the government passed the three farm acts. Okay, although now they have been repealed, but in the year 2020, they had passed those three farm acts. Now, a serious aspirant who is learning the constitution from the perspective of understanding it and interpreting it, he will say that agriculture as a subject is mentioned in the state list. How did the union government make a law on the subject which is mentioned in the state list? So this interpretation is very, very important. The moment you start understanding the constitution, you have to start linking whatever you have understood in the static portion into the current part, into the dynamic part, into what is happening in the day-to-day lives of, or in what is happening in and around us. This application is what UPSC requires. Okay, because tomorrow when you all are going to be officers, nobody is going to ask you, okay, what was Article 21? But it would be your prime duty to understand that how do you apply the constitution for the welfare or the betterment of the vulnerable section. So understanding and analyzing and connecting it with your day-to-day things is very, very important, and that is what UPSC requires from you. Okay, UPSC nowhere requires you to rot learn the constitution. Apart from that, another important insight that we can draw from analyzing the previous year questions is that most of the time, the questions that UPSC has been asking in the UPSC prelims examination are based on the similar themes that they were asking in the previous year question. For instance, uh, in 2019, they had asked a question that right to marry a person of one's own choice is protected under which article? So that was Article 21. In 2021 prelims, they told right to privacy is a part of which of the following articles. So again, it was Article 21. Okay, so now both these concepts, right to privacy and right to marriage, these have been hitting the newspapers every now and then. But it becomes important for us to understand that how do we implement this, okay, and how do we attach them, how do we draw a linkage between the static and the dynamic content. Okay, Therefore, it is very, very important in order to analyze the previous year questions, because most of the times the questions that are asked are based on a similar theme that on which the previous year questions were based upon. Okay, so again, if we have to talk about prelims, so just if you have to go into brief about whatever we have discussed over the past 10 minutes, we can see that Indian polity and constitution plays a very, very critical role in the prelims examination, because almost 15 to 18 questions are asked from this particular question section, which amounts to almost on an average 30 marks. Okay, and these 30 marks are very, very crucial, because the kind of questions are asked that are very, very easy if you have studied and understood the constitution very well. If you have that ability of understanding things and not just rot learning them, then scoring those 30 marks is very, very simple. Okay, now let us try to understand or try to analyze previous year questions. Okay, so as I have been discussing this particular question, that right to marry, UPSC had asked in pre 2019, which article of the Constitution of India safeguards one's right to marry a person of one's choice. Now, there is one under fundamental rights, we have Article 21, which talks about right to life and personal liberty. Okay. Now, this particular right to life and personal liberty, it also, that term liberty also covers your freedom or your choice to marry a person of your own choice. And in fact, the reason for UPSC asking this particular question was because in the Hadia case, the Supreme Court had come up with had in its judgment stated that right to marry a person of one's own choice is a fundamental right available to the citizens of India under Article 21. So what do we learn from this? From this, we learn that it is very, very important to follow Supreme Court judgments, because whenever Supreme Court comes up with an important judgment, it is that judgment becomes very, very important. Okay. After that, when we talk about under which next question, under which schedule of the Constitution that can a transfer of tribal land to private properties for mining be declared null and void. So now again, this particular question is from the topic of schedules to the Indian Constitution. Okay, so now this is a pretty straightforward static question, because if you have read the schedules properly, the 12th schedule, it becomes, this question was very, very straightforward, and the answer is fifth schedule. So now these two questions, what do they tell you? The first question was a very simple one, provided you had read your newspaper on a daily basis and you had gone to the Supreme Court judgment. And then you have the second question, which required you a static, which was mostly related to the static content, and which required you to give that fifth schedule wala thing. Okay. Apart from that, if you analyze this, so in pre 2020, again a simple question of preamble was asked. Okay, so now if we have read preamble, we know about, so when we read preamble, there are two important Supreme Court judgments which come into place, that is the Berubari Union case and the Keshwananda Bharti case. In these two judgments, Supreme Court had given different stance. Now, in one case, in Berubari case, Supreme Court told that preamble is not a part of the Indian Constitution and therefore cannot be amended. And in the Keshwananda Bharti case, Supreme Court told that yes, preamble is a part of the Indian Constitution and can be amended. So these were two different contradictory stances that the Supreme Court took. After that, because Keshwananda Bharti case came in 1973, that was the latest stand of the Supreme Court, and therefore, if we were aware of that particular judgment, we could have eliminated part B, that is not a part of the Indian Constitution. Okay, but only having the understanding of Keshwananda Bharti case was not important, because almost the other options, that is A, C, and D, are saying the same thing. That is, the Constitution is a part of that is, the preamble is a part of the Constitution. Okay, but if we go into or if we have a deeper insight of the preamble, it is also said that the preamble of India is non-justiciable in nature. That is, you cannot go into the court and argue that this thing of the preamble of India was violated. Okay, and if you have this understanding, then only you could have come or arrived to a thing which is option B, that is a part of the Constitution, but it has no legal effect independently of other parts. Okay, so the entire point here is that only having the static content is not important, but understanding and interpreting Supreme Court judgment is also very very important. Okay. Apart from that, another question Supreme Court asked in 2020 prelims was a constitutional government by definition is what? Then it told it is a government by legislature, a popular government, a multi-party government, and a limited government. Okay. Now, if we have understood the meaning of the word constitution, or if we have understood the meaning of the term constitutional government, what does constitutional government means? Constitutional government means a government which has to run according to the rules and regulations that are framed by the constitution of that particular country. It cannot such a government or such a government is limited by the constitution of that particular country. For example, in India's case, the government is the parliament, okay, and the parliament of India cannot make any law which will take away the fundamental rights of the citizens in the normal scenario, okay, which means what? The parliament or the government, which is a constitutional government, it is a limited government. It cannot arbitrarily take away the rights of the people. So therefore, again, the thing that I had emphasized upon was that we need to understand and interpret the Constitution. The moment we start understanding and interpreting the Constitution, the answers become very very easy. Okay, so this was with regards to prelims. Okay, so for prelims, what UPSC has done is it is not only asking you static questions now, but it is also checking thoroughly that have you understood the meaning of the term constitution and have you understood the provisions of the constitution. Okay, are we clear till the prelims were apart? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, hello Neil.
Yes, sir. So there should be a basic analysis or deep analysis.
Okay. So now this is a very good question, that what kind of analysis do we want? Okay. Now, if we analyze the syllabus given by UPSC, and if you go into each and every subject, you could even do a PhD in a particular subject. Okay. We are not here to do PhD in Indian polity. Our aim is that we should be able to clear prelims, write very good answers in mains, and give good answers in our interviews. Okay. So therefore, that depth should be optimum. It should not be that you go into a concept very, very deep and you do a PhD on it, because the syllabus of the exam is so deep that you require at least 9 to 10 months of continuous studying. Only then you'll be able to cover the syllabus once. Okay. So therefore, what kind of analysis should be? It should be an optimum one. It should not be very shallow nor very deep. You should only study that much which is required and asked by the UPSC and what UPSC expects from you. And in order to understand what is the depth that UPSC expects from you, the solution to this is referring to the previous year questions. From what level till what depth UPSC has been asking. And depending upon our analysis of the previous year questions, we can then decide for a journey future in what depth we should be studying. Okay. Is it clear, Neil?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Does anyone else have any doubts?
Hello, sir.
Yeah, Isha?
Sir, actually, my daughter is in 9th standard. And she wanted to become, she wanted to crack UPSC in future.
Okay.
Right now, she will go in 10th. And I have a question. Right now, she is in CBSE school. So what about as we are living in Mumbai and there are state board, so what should we start in 11th from CBSE school or from any other state board? What will be the best for her?
Okay. See, ma'am, if her dream is of cracking the civil services examination, the thorough understanding of NCERTs is something which would lay down a very good foundation for her. Okay. So if you're talking about 11th standard, and because her aim is only to become a civil service or to become an IAS officer, she should continue with her CBSE board only, because NCERTs, they lay down a very basic foundation on which a very strong building can be made. Okay. Yeah. Okay, now having understood this prelims part, let us move to the next stage of the examination, that is the main stage. Okay, now the syllabus for Indian polity and constitution as given in the mains by UPSC is very vast. It is on your screen. Okay, so now after analyzing the previous year questions, we can put or we can conclude that these are the important topics on which UPSC has been continuously asking questions in the mains examination. Okay, so it has been asking questions on the basics of the constitution, the basic structure of the constitution, federalism and issues associated with it, separation of powers, what are the issues in the functioning of the Indian parliament, what is local governance, and what are the issues faced by the Panchayati Raj system, what are the issues faced by Indian judiciary, etc., etc., etc. So one thing that we understand here is in UPSC mains, UPSC is not at all interested in asking very static questions. That is, it is not going to ask you list down all the 11 fundamental duties that are mentioned in part 4A of the Indian Constitution, because that is very static, and UPSC does not ask you those kind of questions. Okay, you herein UPSC is going to ask you analytical questions, and by analytical questions, what do we mean? We mean that whatever is happening in and around us, how do we analyze those things, and how do we link those things with our static syllabus that we have read, and how do we find optimum solutions for it? Okay, this thing will be dealing or we'll be discussing it with the help of questions. Okay, so before we come to the questions and before we analyze how what should be the strategy for dealing with the UPSC means, let us first understand the weightage of Indian polity and constitution in our means examination. So Indian polity and constitution, it forms a part of a general studies paper 2. Okay, and in general studies paper 2 we have different subjects. For instance, we have Indian polity and constitution, we have governance, we have social justice, and we have international relations. These are the four major topics that are a part of a general studies paper 2. Now out of these four parts, almost, and these four parts cumulatively are asked for 250 marks. That is, the entire general studies paper 2 is for 250 marks. Of this 250 marks, the major portion or the major chunk is allotted to Indian polity and constitution. That is, almost questions worth 100 to 120 marks would be asked from Indian polity and constitution section only. Okay, which means that almost 40% of the thing. Okay, so therefore, again, in UPSC or in UPSC mains also, Indian polity plays a very significant role. Okay, so therefore, understanding the subject and understanding the constitution is very important. Now, what are the kind of questions that they are asked? We'll try to observe them. Okay, let us consider this for let us consider this third question. What does this question read? It says that recent amendments to the Right to Information Act will have a profound impact on the autonomy and independence of the Information Commission. Discuss. This question was asked in the 2020 mains paper. Now, first of all, why was this question asked? This question was asked because in the year 2019, the government had amended the Right to Information Act. We have an RTI Act, okay, of 2005. That RTI Act was amended, and through an amendment made to the RTI Act, the central government took towards itself all the powers and all the functions, all the powers through which it could decide the salaries and the tenure of the information commissioners. So now this was completely a current affairs. That is, the Supreme Court has amended the Right to Information Act of 2005. Now, when I talk about the static subject of Indian polity, we have got something called as the local bodies. If you see here, we have something called as the statutory, regulatory, and various quasi-judicial bodies. Okay, this is mentioned in the syllabus. Okay, now your Information Commission, it is a statutory body which is set up under the Right to Information Act of 2005. Now, in the current context, the central government had brought an amendment to this particular act. Now, now the UPSC in the mains will not ask you what is Information Commission or what was this RTI Act. But it is now asking you what would be the impact of these amendments on the independence of right of the Information Commission. So herein that analysis wala part comes in, because having a thorough analysis is very important. So, in order to prepare for UPSC means for Indian polity, what is very critical is that we first of all are very aware of what is happening around us on a day-to-day basis. What is the Supreme Court coming up with an important judgment? Is the Parliament of India coming up with an important act? Is the Parliament amending any important act? All these things are very important, because with reference to these things only, questions are framed in UPSC means. Let me take another example. The last question, it reads that how far do you think that cooperation, competition, and confrontation have shaped the nature of federation in India? Cite some recent examples to validate your answer. Now, again, if we understand, if we go into the syllabus, we have something called as issues, federalism and issues associated with it. This is one part of the syllabus. Okay, but UPSC did not directly ask you the question, what are the issues faced with federalism? How did it frame the question? It framed the question asking that cooperation, competition, and confrontation have shaped the federation. Now, in order to answer this question, there are two things that you require. One thing is from your static syllabus, you understand what is the meaning of the term federation. How is India completely a federal body, or is it a quasi-federal body? And what are the federal features of the constitution? This is the static portion that you required for answering this particular question. But this was not enough. In in addition to this, you had to append your current affairs. For instance, if you have noticed during the COVID times, there was a lot of tussle going on between the central government and the state government on the basis of the GST compensation. The states were demanding that the center should pay them the GST compensation as soon as possible, because they were finding it difficult to finance themselves, because due to COVID, there was a lockdown imposed and all the industries had come to a halt, and therefore the source of revenue had gone down. But the central government also said that we don't have money to give you. Now, this was the confrontation that was happening between the central government and state governments with regards to GST compensation. So now this is an example which you could have added when you were talking about this confrontation wala point. Apart from that, for competition point, we all know that we have a body called as Niti Aayog, and that Niti Aayog will come up with various indexes. One of the indexes, the SDG India Index. Another program that it runs is called as the Aspirational Districts Program. Now, through these programs, what does Niti Aayog try to do? Niti Aayog tries to bring about a competition between various states, so that by competing with each other, they can achieve development. So that is called as competitive federalism, right? Apart from that, we had cooperation. So with regards to cooperation, you can talk, there are various bodies such as the GST Council. So you have a body called as interstate councils. So these councils are made so that there is cooperation between states, right? So what does this question expect from you? This question expected from you that you should know the essence of federalism, and you needed to append, or you needed to analyze this essence of federalism by appending the relevant current affairs, right? So in UPSC means you are least expected to answer completely a static question. What UPSC is asking you that how are you applying your static concepts to the dynamic things that are happening around you every day? Okay. If we are able to do this, if we are able to establish this contact, if we are able to establish this link between the static and the dynamic thing, our Indian polity becomes a very easy thing to do. Okay, so therefore, if we have to draw, or if we have to learn something from the previous year analysis of the UPSC means from Indian polity, one thing is that we need to be very thorough with the current affairs. We need to be very aware of what is happening in and around us, and what impact does it have. Now, the moment that we are aware of the things that are happening in and around us, what the next logical step is to establish a link between the dynamic things that are happening in and around us with the static concept. That is what is written in the Indian Constitution. Okay. Apart from that, apart from these two things, another very important thing for UPSC means for Indian polity is keeping a track of Indian judiciary. See, because the Indian judiciary, especially the Supreme Court, is called as the guardian of the Indian Constitution. So when it is acting as a guardian of the Indian Constitution through its judgments, the Supreme Court is trying and preserving the essence of the Indian Constitution, which our constitution makers had made. Okay, therefore, whatever Supreme Court delivers in its judgments, and if those judgments are very, very important, we need to make a note of these judgments. For instance, secularism is a concept wherein we say that each and every religion is important, right? So, in one of its judgment called as the S.R. Bommai case of 1994, Supreme Court had highlighted the fact that secularism is a basic structure of the constitution, right? And therefore it cannot be amended, right? So now secularism is a static topic. S.R. Bommai case was a dynamic topic. You try to establish a link between them. Okay, so this is what is very, very critical. So keeping a track of the Supreme Court judgments and mentioning them in your answers is very, very important, because keep mentioning them in your answers would add a lot of value to your answers, and it would make your answers stand out or stand apart from the other candidates. Apart from that, we have some very, very important judgments of the commissions. So these judgments of the commission, such as when we talk about the Sarkaria Commission or the Punchi Commission, the recommendations that these commissions give sometimes become very, very important. Now let us take an example. The post of the governor has been, or is a very controversial post, because it keeps on hitting the newspaper every now and then. Okay, for instance, in the case of Puducherry, the same thing happened. There was a tussle going on between the lieutenant governor there and the established government. Same thing happened with the case of Delhi. Okay, so therefore, with regards to this, there were commissions appointed, such as the Punchi Commission and Sarkaria Commission, and they told that there should be certain algorithms or flowchart that should be followed in order to appoint the governor of a particular state or a UT. Okay, so therefore, now when you're writing an answer on governor, in the way forward, if we mention these commissions, it gives a lot of value to our answers. Okay, so quick pointers that we need to remember while answering means questions for Indian polity is that first thing is that we need to keep a track of our current affairs. That is point number one. Then we need to establish a link between the current and the static content. That is point number two. Point number three is keeping a track of the Supreme Court judgments. And point number four is keeping a track of important commissions and their recommendations that have been coming in. Following these four steps, we'll be able to try and write a very, very good answer in the UPSC means. Okay. So that was with regards to the importance of Indian polity and how to study Indian polity from UPSC means perspective. Do we have any doubts here?
Hello, sir.
Yeah, Neil.
So while analyzing the PYQs, by analyzing the prelims PYQ, we should analyze the important word in the question. Example, Vijayanagar Empire. So we should study it important.
Yeah. Okay. Answering your question, Neil, specifically, those things become very, very important. For example, in Indian polity also, let me take example of the concept of basic structure. Now, UPSC, this is one of the most favorite topics of UPSC when it comes to Indian polity. And if you analyze the previous year questions, almost every alternate year you will find a question on either basic structure or the components of basic structure. Okay. So now that you have analyzed the previous year questions, you know that this topic of basic structure is very, very important. So giving an extra attention to that topic is very, very important. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Do we have any other doubts? Hello. Is there anyone with any other doubts? Okay, fine. So now let us try to understand. Now so far what we have understood is that this particular paper, that is Indian Polity and Constitution, we have understood the importance of this subject, and individually what important role or what is the weightage of this particular subject. However, apart from its own thing, Indian Polity and Constitution has a lot of inter-subject connectivity. Okay, And how is this intersubject connectivity established? Let us take an example. For instance, in your GS paper 1, General Studies paper 1, we have something called as a subject which is called as Indian society. Okay, and in Indian society, we'll study about the caste system. Now, one of the very evil impact of the caste system was that it gave birth to something called as untouchability. Right? Now, this untouchability was practiced in India for a lot amount of time. It was passed on since through generations to generations. Now, what happened was when the constitution makers were framing that particular constitution, they added Article 17, that is abolition of untouchability, right? So now what is happening is now you can use your knowledge that you have gained in Indian polity and apply that particular knowledge to your other subjects as well. For example, when it comes to eradication of certain social evils, what step does or what protection does the constitution provide? So, for example, we have the topic of, or we have something called as women empowerment. Okay. So now, because India has been a patriarchal society, men have enjoyed the dominance over women since generations. Right. Now we know that this is the character of the Indian society. So now, in order to change this character, the Constitution of India provides something called as Article 14, right to equality. Okay. Now, through right to equality, what does the constitution aim to? The constitution aims to establish a level playing field between the males and the females, right? So now you could have, in order to gain a greater insight on the topic of women empowerment, you could understand how the constitution is trying to achieve this particular phenomenon of women empowerment, and how the constitution is trying to establish a level playing field between the male gender and the female gender in India. Okay, so my entire point here is that once you understand the constitution very thoroughly, you can start applying those concepts of Indian constitution for other subjects also. Now, how this will benefit is it will help in enriching your answers. Okay, for instance, if you are writing an answer on caste system, and then you talk about how the constitution aims to how does the constitution aims to eradicate the evils that were formed because of the caste system, it would give an extra advantage, or it would add a new dimension to your answer. Okay, so this is how you'd have to connect different dots or different subjects in the UPSC syllabus, because everything is linked to every different thing. Okay, for example, let us take an example of social justice, which is a part of the GS paper 2. Now, when talking about social justice, we say that there are certain sections of the population, such as the women, children, people who are born in downtrodden caste. They do not get equal access to all the amenities. Now, in order to provide them equal access, India has turned itself into a welfare state, and the policy of welfareism is that it tries to achieve the good of all. Okay, now this particular principle of welfareism is highlighted in the preamble also, and is highlighted in the directive principles of state policy also. So again, the constitution is somewhere trying to achieve, or the constitution is somewhere trying to bring in a social change in the society, right? So that is how you can again apply the concepts of your Indian polity and constitution to your GS paper 2 also. Now, when I come to GS paper 3, the most dominant portion of GS paper 3 is about Indian economy. Indian economy forms a part of the GS paper 3. Now, in Indian economy, you have something called as the budget. Okay, and we all know that the budget is passed on the 1st of Feb every year. Right? Now, only knowing this much is not important. Having a background of that is also important. That is, how is the budget enacted in the parliament? Now, to answer that question, that how is the budget enacted in the parliament, the answer is going to be provided by Article 112 of the Indian Constitution, which says that there shall be an annual financial statement that should be laid down by the President of India. Right? So, what am I trying to say here is that even for Indian economy, in order to understand the budget, you first need to understand the process of enactment of budget, which what constitution is going to tell you, because constitution has laid down the details of it. Okay, apart from that, now when we saw about the main syllabus, we saw about a term called as various constitutional, statutory and non-constitutional bodies, right? Now, one of the constitutional bodies that we have is called as the Finance Commission of India. Okay, now this particular finance commission It plays a role of dividing the total amount of money between center and the state. In layman's language, this is the job of the Finance Commission of India. Now, when we come to economy, there is a term called as fiscal federalism. Now, in order to understand what is fiscal federalism in your economy section, you first need to understand what is federalism, which is a part of your Indian polity. Okay, unless and until you don't understand the meaning of the term federalism, you will not be in a position to understand what fiscal federalism is. Okay, so therefore, what do we learn from this? Again, that polity, it plays or it acts as a backbone for each and every subject. Okay, so in order to even answer the questions of other GS papers effectively, your understanding of Indian polity and constitution is going to play a very, very major role. Okay, that and that is something which is very, very critical. Apart from that, in your GS paper 4, that is ethics, integrity, and aptitude, you have to answer a lot of case studies, because in your GS paper 4, almost 100 to 120 marks will come from case studies. Now, in order to answer those case studies, your understanding of constitution is important, because see, through case studies, what UPSC is trying to ask you is, they'll put you in a certain condition, in a certain condition, and then they'll ask you, if you were in this condition, how would you have been reacted. Okay, now, when you are in that condition, you'll have to think like a person who is a civilized being, and who has the knowledge, or who has a basic knowledge of the constitution, because you cannot go and abruptly give any answer which is not in lines with the Indian constitution, or which is not in lines with the principles enshrined by the Indian constitution. Now let me take an example. Suppose there is a case study in GS paper 4 which says that you are the governor of Jammu and Kashmir, and there what is happening? There certain riots are taking place for separation of Kashmir from India and forming a separate state. You being the governor, what are the steps you could have taken? Okay, now, in order to write your steps, you need to take the support of the Constitution of India. Because the Constitution of India provides, or a basic principle of the Constitution of India is integrity. That is, in any case, no state or UT of Indian Constitution is allowed to secede from the Indian Union, which means that being the governor, that option, that allowing Kashmir to secede from India, is neglected, is off. You cannot even write that. So, in order to write some mature answers to your case studies, constitution, or taking the help of the constitution, becomes very, very important. So again, having a good knowledge and having a good interpretation of the constitution becomes very, very critical even there. Apart from that, you have a paper called as essay. In this paper, there are two essays that you have to write for uh, 125 marks each, and each essay should be almost 1000 to 1200 words. Now, again, for writing these essays, you have to present a multidimensional views, and one of the most important dimension is of constitution. So that dimension you will have to add in your essay. So again, to make your essays very, very good, to make your essays richer, what is important is that you have a good knowledge of polity and constitution. So through this, what I wanted to emphasize is that this particular subject, that is Indian polity and constitution, is in despite of having a lot of weightage independently, it also plays a very, very critical role in other subjects as well. Okay, and in order to leverage not only the weightage that it offers independently, but also that indirect weightage that it has in other subjects, you need to have a very, very thorough understanding, and you need to understand the constitution. Don't focus on rot learning the provisions of the constitution and rot learning the articles. Yes, there are certain articles that you need to remember, such as fundamental rights, DPSPs, fundamental duties, some powers of the president, such as Article 72. Okay, so these are certain important articles that you need to remember, but it is not at all important that you go on learning all the 450 articles that are written in the Indian Constitution. That is not what UPSC is expecting out of you. Okay, now, apart from this inter-subject connectivity, there are more two ways or more two areas where you can apply your knowledge of polity and constitution. That is in your optional papers. Okay, most of the options they have this particular thing wherein they have to talk about the changes that the constitution has brought in. For example, if I have to talk about sociology, so constitution and social change is a topic which is mentioned in sociology optional. Now, again, in order to cover that topic also, you require the knowledge of Indian Constitution, because you have to analyze what social change the Constitution is trying to bring in the society. For instance, as I told you, Indian society traditionally has been a patriarchal society wherein men have enjoyed the dominance. But through Article 14, through Article 21, through Article 19, what Constitution has tried to achieve is it has tried to bring a social change in the society through which it is aiming to establish a level playing field between the male gender and the female gender, right? So to sum up the entire discussion, this is what is the importance of Indian polity. That is, not only it has a lot of independent weightage, but it has a lot of inter-subject reliability, inter-subject connectivity, wherein it has a weightage with all the other parts of the syllabus as well. Okay, are we clear on this?
Yes, sir.
Okay, do we have any doubts here? Do we have any doubts here? Okay. Okay, now let us come to the sources. Okay. See, as I told you, the source for Indian polity, we can divide it into two parts: sources for prelims and sources for mains. When it comes to prelims, first try to understand where do you stand in terms of your preparation. Okay, because see, some of us who have studied well in their school days or in their college days, they do have a very good understanding about the government as such. They have a basic understanding of what is the government, what is the constitution, what is the federal structure, etc., etc., etc. For such people who have a very good understanding of certain basic things, you need not start with the NCRTs. You can directly take up the standard reference books. But for those who want to have or who do not have the basic understanding and would and have started from scratch, for them the number one step is that you go through this NCRT of class 11, that is Indian Constitution at Work. This is a very very beautiful NCRT which gives you a very very basic idea of the Constitution and how the Constitution how the Constitution ensures the smooth functioning of the Indian government, and it will also give you the idea about the election process, federalism, etc., etc., etc. Okay. Apart from this, the reference book or the standard reference book that you have to follow is Indian Polity by M. Lakshmikant. There are multiple reference books that are present in the market, but this is the best one because the language that is there in this particular book is very, very simple. Okay, it is not written anywhere in legal terms, which would be difficult for you to understand. The language written is very, very simple. Apart from that, apart from the language that is there in this particular book, this particular if a serious aspirant is using this book or is studying this book thoroughly, that is at least 3 to 4 times before entering the prelims hall, you can even guarantee an accuracy rate of 90% or even 100% at times, because that is how detailed this book is. Okay, so this particular book is step 2 for your preparation. Reading this NCRT and reading M. Lakshmikant thoroughly would build up a base. Okay, herein your understanding of the static syllabus would be done. But apart from that, on one hand you have to go on reading these books. On the second hand, what you have to do is you have to read the current affairs on a very very daily basis, and the best source to be in touch with the current affairs is to read the newspapers on a daily basis. And in order to and the standard newspapers for the UPSC are the Hindu and the Indian Express. If a serious aspirant is reading these newspapers on a regular basis, then the things become a lot easier for them, because they are then able to connect the static and the dynamic portions, and then they are able to establish that link which I have been talking about in the past 1 hour. Okay, so therefore at one hand you go on with the static things, that is NCRT and Lakshmikant, and on the second hand you start reading these newspapers and try to establish whatever you are reading, how can you apply or how can you connect it with the things that you have read in the static portion. Okay, apart from that, these are the two websites. One is of PIV India. So this is about the latest government announcements, certain schemes that the government has been running. So, and after that you have this website called as the prsindia.com. So this particular website, whatever bill a government is bringing in, or if any legislation has been brought in, if any act has been passed, this website would give you a very good idea about the details of that particular act. Or if any Supreme Court judgment has come out which is of importance, then this particular website would give you a detailed analysis of that particular judgment. Okay, so these are the sources from my end. Okay, and try and keep the sources very limited. Try and keep the sources very short. It is because, see, there are two types of aspirants that I have seen. One who would go on collecting a lot of notes. Okay, now what happens in this is when you start collecting a lot of notes, you have Lakshmikant with you, you have DD Basu with you, then you have notes of all in a rank one topper with you. What will happen is, you suppose, let me take example of fundamental rights. You will read fundamental rights from Lakshmikant also, you will read fundamental rights from DD Basu also, you will read fundamental rights from the topper's notes also. Now what is happening is you have read the same topic from three different sources. Instead, what I would suggest is read the topic three times, but from the same source. For example, if you're reading it from Indian Polity by M. Lakshmikant, you have read fundamental right once. Try reading it twice, thrice through multiple revisions. Now, what will happen is when you keep reading that one source multiple times, things start to get consolidated in your brain. You start to remember things, you start to analyze things a lot. Okay, so therefore, please keep your sources very limited. Don't go on becoming a note collector, because that is not our ultimate aim. Our aim is to become a district collector. So keep your sources very limited, but yes, revise these sources time and again, because this constant revision would help you to consolidate things a lot. Okay, so these were the sources from my end. Okay, so do we have any questions? Do we have any questions? Okay, fine then. So that was the agenda for today's webinar. That is to give you all a brief analysis of what role or what is the importance of Indian polity and constitution. How are the previous year questions asked? What is the strategy and how should we adopt on studying methodology, and what are the sources? Okay. I hope you all have enjoyed this particular session and this particular session was insightful to you all. Okay. So on that note, I guess it is time to call an off. We are at the Prayas. We are conducting regular webinars every day, and different faculties, different subject matter experts, and certain officers would come and tell you all about the strategies and the plans in which are required in order to excel in this particular examination. So please connect with us uh, and and take advantage of this, which would help in your preparation. Okay, so on that note, I think it is time to call it an off. Thank you so much. Thank you.